This is a Brooklyn-bound 2 express train.
Hello, and welcome to my channel, In Search of Wonder. My name is Anne, and today we're going to go to New York. We've been all over the place recently. We've been into DC to see the Folger Shakespeare Library, as well as the home of Marjorie Merriweather Post. We've also gone into Missouri to visit a little with my family, and today we're going to go to New York City. I like to go there maybe every couple years or so and catch a show and perhaps see whatever I can see. This year, my husband and I were able to go up for a couple of days, and we had a fantastic time. Among other things, we went back to the Met, and we also went to the Cloisters, which is another museum operated by the Met. And I talked about those in my weekly reading vlog that is coming up this coming Sunday. So you will hear more about our adventures in those museums there. But I also wanted to go to the Morgan Library. I'd been wanting to go there ever since my sister had told me about it. She had read the book, I believe it's called The Personal Librarian. I believe that was written by Marie Benedict and another author. I cannot remember who else, but it was about the personal librarian for J.P. Morgan and the Morgan family. And she was their personal librarian for several decades, I believe. And she helped build their collection to what it is today. And the Morgan Library is in New York, not far from the New York Public Library, which is also a really cool library to visit. It houses their collection of valuable, rare books, as well as the architecture and art and furnishings in the library, which come from Europe mostly and are dating from the Renaissance era and some probably even earlier than that. It's really a beautiful museum, and the library collection is quite impressive. The museum also has several rotating exhibits. We went to an interesting one that featured a photographer from the 19th century, mid to late 19th century, and she took only portraits. That was her specialty. She took portrait photography, but she had kind of a unique spin on it. She would do basic standard portraiture, but she also would stage her models and dress them in costuming so as to portray themes or ideas or characters or scenes from books and poetry and the like. So that was really cool to see some of her portraits that she had taken. There was one I really liked. The woman in the portrait had kind of like a glow around her from the lighting, and it was supposed to resemble the poem She Walks in Beauty by Lord Byron, which is a poem that I really like. So that was a really cool portrait to see. They have other rotating exhibits. They have some permanent exhibits as well. So it's a fun library to go to in general for any reader. So it costs $25 per person and definitely worth it, and plan to spend a few hours there if you are an avid reader and you enjoy looking at that sort of thing. So my husband and I went to this library. So I'm going to take you along with us as well and see what we can see. First, of course, if you're traveling with me, we have to stop for coffee. I went to several different coffee shops while we were there in New York City, but the one that sticks out in my mind was called Tiny Dancer. And this little coffee shop was tucked into a subway walkway. So it wasn't on the actual platform where you catch the subway, although I did go to a coffee shop that was on the actual platform, and that was pretty cool too. But this one was tucked into one of the walkways on your way to get into the station. Cutest little shop, just kind of cozy and with a lot of atmosphere. And I got myself a little breve cortado and I sat there and drank it there. You could get it for here or to go. And so I got it for here just because I wanted the experience of sitting there in that coffee shop in the subway and drinking my little coffee. So that was a wonderful start to that day. And then also just around the corner from there, maybe a block or two over, was a popular little cafe bakery called Bibble and Sip, I believe. They apparently frequently have long lines. There was not a line when we went, but I could see why there often is. It was a fun, like Korean French fusion bakery where they had all different sorts of unique pastries and cookies and cakes. Some of the cakes were designed to look like cute little animals, and they had these cream puffs that were filled with the most amazing cream. I got an Earl Grey cream puff. The cream in the middle was like the best part. It was light and airy and delicious, just enough Earl Grey flavor, just enough sweetness, just enough texture to it to be delicious and not overpowering in any way. Really good. They also had what I thought was interesting, like an alpaca was their logo. And so they had these alpaca croissant cakes where it was shaped like an alpaca face to start with. And then it had, and it was made out of a croissant. The outer shell was a croissant, like a croissant dough, but on the inside was cake. And one of them was a red velvet cake, and one of them, I don't know what it was. We didn't get those because I wasn't really sure about the combination of croissant and cake. And also it was like very expensive, but I thought it was a pretty fun idea. And they also had a coffee shop there as well. And their espresso machines, I'd never seen like that. They looked kind of like taps coming up out of the counter. And that's where they would insert the filter, the portafilter, into the head of the fountain. And that's how they made their espresso. I thought that was pretty cool. So now that we have been fortified with our coffee and our little treat from the cafe, we can head on to the museum. The Morgan Library and Museum is actually a whole complex of buildings built on the block where the Morgan family had their New York townhome. We are heading right now in the direction of the building that he originally designed to house his library and his art collection. This is the building that J.P. Morgan designed to house his library, and it was built next to his townhome in New York City. This entrance is no longer used, but it leads you directly to the Rotunda. The Rotunda is the centerpiece of J.P. Morgan's library. All the other rooms branch off of it. These impressive ceilings are inspired by Renaissance artists, but were painted by an American artist. Heading north out of the Rotunda, you enter Bella DaCosta Green's office. She was J.P. Morgan's personal librarian, and she managed his collection. Her office echoes the design of the library, which we were not actually able to see the day we were there because it was under renovation. But
Instead of 3 tiers of library shelves, you only have that one top tier. And below that are items from JP Morgan's Antiquities collection. Heading out of the rotunda to the west is JP Morgan's study, and in his study is this vault, which he built especially to contain his collection of very rare and extremely valuable books. His actual study is a museum in and of itself. Everything, the wall coverings, the ceiling, the paintings, the decorative items are all collected from Europe, and most of them are from the Renaissance era. It was absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. These are all books. The Miser's Daughter. Mansfield Park. Burns poems. Coleridge. Wow.
Although I enjoyed everything about the Morgan Library and the exhibits that we walked through there, I was primarily interested in seeing their temporary exhibit about Jane Austen, honoring her for her 250th birthday this year. Although I was a little bit unsure what to expect, I wasn't sure exactly what they had in their collection. I didn't know how expansive the exhibit would be and if it would be worth my time, but I can definitively say that it was 100% worth it. It was worth going there. It was worth the cost. It was worth the time. It was worth all of it. I thoroughly enjoyed their exhibit. Their collection actually of Jane Austen material was quite impressive. There was a woman, Alberta Burke, I believe was her name. She was unaffiliated with the Morgan Library, but she was a Jane Austen fan. She was not an official book collector. She just was interested in Jane Austen and her work, and she had the funds available to purchase what she liked. So she taught herself the business of book collecting and rare book collecting. This was in the early to mid 20th century, I believe, and she acquired as many manuscripts from Jane Austen's hand that she could. Only one book manuscript exists, which I'll show you in a minute, but there are many letters that Jane Austen wrote by hand that still exist to this day. So she collected a lot of those handwritten letters, and some other items that you will see in the video coming up here that were written in Jane Austen's own hand. So Alberta Burke, if that was her name, she collected all of those sort of things that she could find. And then she expanded her collection to include other editions, rare editions of Jane Austen's novels, including foreign language editions and editions that were special for a particular reason or other. For example, there is a first edition American printing of Pride and Prejudice, which is titled Elizabeth Bennet for some reason. And so she had that, and she had some other books that were just related to Jane Austen. So she acquired all of those things during her life, and then she bequeathed all of that to the Morgan Library in her will. And so that's how they came to acquire a lot of the Jane Austen material that was available at the exhibit that I saw. Some of it was also acquired by the personal librarian I already mentioned, to Bella DaCosta Green, I think was her name. She also had collected some things herself for that library. She may have collected some of the first editions, I'm not really sure. They didn't necessarily spell all of that out in the exhibit, not that I saw. But anyway, the exhibit was substantial. It was interesting. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Let's take a look at some of the things that I saw there.
Now let's take a little tour of the Lively Mind exhibit, Jane Austen at 250. This here is a turquoise ring that belonged to Jane Austen, and I'm going to pause here and tell you a little story about this that I found interesting. So, which is all on that green plaque you see, but it's a little fuzzy. So let me just tell you, apparently this turquoise ring was put on auction at some point recently, and Kelly Clarkson, of all people, bought it at the auction. However, the Brits raised an uproar because they did not want this particular artifact to leave the shores of England. Now, on its surface, I have no issue with that. It is an important artifact to the people of England. Jane Austen is their beloved author. She belongs to them. I take no issue with that. But I have to admit, I found it a little bit ironic because, you know, my British friends, I love you dearly. I love you very much, but I've been to the British Museum. I know what y'all got there, and it didn't all come from England. I know that much. And here we have a replica of a police that Austen bespoke. This was after she had started to earn a little money, and we'll pause here so I can tell you a little bit about this. She had started to earn a little money from the sale of her books, and so she was able to request this custom-made police with this pattern, this print that features oak leaves all over it on a brown background. And a modern seamstress has taken the time to study the pattern. I forget where the original is, which museum is holding this original police, but the seamstress, she figured out what the pattern was, and they made a replica of the fabric, and she made this one, an exact copy of the original one. Based on the dimensions of this police, they estimate that Jane Austen was 5'6" to 5'8", which is kind of tall for a woman. Anyway, I love this. I thought this was absolutely beautiful and gives us a good sense of Jane Austen's sense of style. The Morgan Library has in their collection first editions of all Austen's novels. Here is Emma and Sense and Sensibility, but you can see all of her main novels there as well. If you've read Mansfield Park, then you know that there is a lot of discussion in that book about landscape design and architecture, and there is a lot of talk about updating one of the estates mentioned in the novel to reflect the current style in vogue, more romantic style. And a particular landscape architect was mentioned, Humphrey Repton, and he was an actual landscape architect, the most famous of his day and still widely known and an influential person in that field of study. And this is a book with his designs for a particular estate that you can see his plans, and then his proposal is, you'll see here in just a second, his proposal to the landowners for his intended updates to their landscape. One thing I have read frequently in biographies of Austen, and she mentioned this herself in some letters, she often copied the music that she played. Instead of purchasing sheet music, which could be prohibitively expensive, she would borrow from someone else and copy their music. And back then, that was perfectly acceptable, legitimate way to build your music library. So this is a book of manuscript paper wherein Jane Austen has copied pieces of music that she wanted to play. And apparently you can find digital copies of this music. Most of them are not by composers that we would consider today to be well known from that era. They were lesser known composers, but one of my next projects is going to be finding that digital music, printing it out, and playing it myself, just for the fun of it. Now this was really cool. The only existing manuscript that is the story written in Jane Austen's own hand that exists to this day is the manuscript for her novella, Lady Susan. And that manuscript is in possession of the Morgan Library. So, of course, they had portions of it displayed, which was really probably one of the most memorable literary artifacts that I have seen in my lifetime. It ranks right up there with seeing Pa's actual fiddle at the museum in Mansfield, Missouri, where Laura Ingalls Wilder and her husband lived. Pa's fiddle is in the museum there. That was quite a moment to see that. But this was really close to that as well. This was very cool to see. Her own story written in her own hand. This also I really enjoyed seeing. This is a copy of Camilla by Frances Burney. Jane Austen was a big fan of Frances Burney, and she subscribed to Camilla. Now, if you're not familiar with that, basically it was a kind of crowdfunding in the 19th, 18th century, where an author, instead of outputting their own funds to publish a book, or if a publisher was not willing to publish it for them, they could get people to subscribe. So basically those people would be paying in advance, which would pay for the publication of the book. And then the subscribers would get a copy of it once it was published. And so Jane Austen subscribed to Camilla for its publication. And so her name is in the list of subscribers. And you can see it right there, Miss J. Austen Steventon. I had heard about this, that Austen had subscribed to Camilla and that her name is in the list, but it was fun to actually see that in the actual book.
In addition to the items that you saw in that little tour, there were some really other fun things that they had on display. They had created a replica of Jane Austen's writing desk that looks exactly like the one that is in Jane Austen's house in Chawton. So if you are not able to go across the pond to England and see that for yourself, but you can get to New York City, you can see one that looks very much the same as hers. And there is the wallpaper. All of the walls are papered in the same wallpaper that they had used in their house in the Chawton Cottage. And that was also it was actually really pretty wallpaper. There are the foreign editions and other special editions of her books that I had mentioned. And also they have highlighted some of her letters, which is really fun. One of the letters that I took a picture of was one that she wrote to one of her nieces, and she wrote it backwards in kind of like code. So her niece had to read the whole letter backwards. So that was a fun one to see. There was Martha Lloyd's cookbook, which Martha Lloyd was a friend of Jane and Cassandra Austen, and she published a cookbook. So you can see that there. There was Jane Austen's Juvenilia that she wrote, dedicated to her father. So you can see a copy of that. There are other books and publications that are tangentially related to Austen, connected to her in some way or other. There is the letter that the Prince Regent's librarian, I think it was his librarian, sent to Austen asking her to dedicate her next novel to the prince, and all that kind of stuff. So many interesting, fun, and fascinating objects that you can see. I thoroughly enjoyed my visit there and highly recommend if you can get there before they close that exhibit. So I thoroughly enjoyed my visit to the Morgan Library and highly recommend it. Whether or not you can get there in time to see the Jane Austen exhibit before it closes, it's definitely worth a visit just for the architecture and the fact that it is an amazing library, and every book lover should visit every amazing library. Speaking of amazing libraries, another highly popular for good reason. Library in New York City is the New York Public Library. When most people think of the New York Public Library, they think of the large historic building off of Bryant Park that is not too far from Times Square. And that is certainly a library worth visiting. If you are ever in New York City, definitely walk through there. The architecture is astonishingly beautiful. The first time I went through, I stopped every 3 seconds, I think, and took a picture. It was just so beautiful. They also have rotating exhibits of various things that you can see and, museum type artifacts and collections. And they have a pretty cool gift shop as well, which I recommend. And it's a fun place to go. But I did not go there this time. I walked by it once or twice, but I did not go in this time. However, the modern library just across the street caught my eye this time for some reason. I had never noticed it before, but I saw it and I thought, hey, let's go in. Let's just see. So my husband and I went in, and it was actually really fun. And if you are ever in New York City, I think it would be fun just to stop in there for 2 reasons. One, on the main floor, when you first go in, they have a huge table with 4 to 5 different puzzles set out in progress. And anyone and everyone is welcome to have a seat and sit there and put together as much of the puzzle as they want to. It is a wonderful respite from walking your feet off all day. If you've been to New York City, you know what I mean. And it's just a fun, relaxing activity that is totally free and in the air conditioning. Hello. So that was fun. Although we accomplished nothing in the puzzle. The particular puzzle that we sat down at had only sky left. And yeah, there was a reason that only the sky was left. We contributed nothing to the building of the puzzle. But we saw that they had a rooftop terrace. So that's the other reason I think that it would be fun for you to visit this library next time you're in New York City. We took the elevator up to the 7th floor, I think it was, and they have a little cafe. I cannot speak to the quality of the coffee or the food at the cafe. It was, a basic cafeteria style sort of thing, but they do have like coffee and tea and cold drinks and pastries and sandwiches available there should you desire. And you can eat it inside, or you can go out onto the rooftop terrace, which was actually quite expansive. There's a Starbucks in New York City that has a rooftop terrace as well, which is fun to go to, but it's not a very large space and it gets very crowded. This one was actually quite spacious, and they had a good bit of seating. And even if you couldn't find a seat, there were plenty of places, empty places, to stand and take in the view. And being a little bit elevated above the street level, it had a calmer feel to it, and it was just a nice spot to relax and take in the view, sip a beverage if you purchased one at the cafe, and read a book, for example. So it was a lot of fun, and we really enjoyed that. So a little hidden gem in the middle of the city next time you go to visit, if you want to discover a little more. Now, we cannot leave without me sharing with you their amazing gift shop. And when I say amazing, I mean amazing. They had the most concentrated, extensive collection of Austen-related book lover merchandise that I've ever seen. And I wanted one of everything. I really wanted one of everything. I literally, if I had thousands of dollars at my disposal to to spend, I would have just plunked it all down and picked up all of it and tried to fit it on the train back home somehow. But alas and alack, I had more self-control than that. But I did enjoy browsing through it, browsing through again, taking time to make careful decisions about my purchases and choosing which items I wanted to take home with me from that wonderful exhibit and library. So first, let me show you what they had on offer, and I want you to tell me in the comments which of these items you would most want to buy. And you can't pick all of them. You have to pick one or two, at the most three, okay? 3 things that you would buy from what you see here. And then I will show you the 3 things that I picked. So first of all, the copy of Lady Susan that I currently have is this one, which is fine. I think that one of my kids gave it to me for Christmas or my birthday. They bought it off my Amazon wish list, and I am happy to have it and I will keep it, but it is a print on demand, very basic copy. It's pretty, it's fine, but you know, that's what it is. So I picked up this cloth bound hardback cover of Lady Susan. Isn't that just beautiful? Which coordinates, I guess, to an extent with my box set of Austen's novels, which are also cloth bound. Not Penguin, this is Penguin, they're not Penguin, but it coordinates a little better, but also it's just a really nice copy. So that was the first thing that I got. And then I don't remember who had mentioned it before, but I know that someone, one of my friends here, has mentioned this cookbook, Jane Austen's Table, and they have this there, and I decided to get it. So they had several cookbooks. I thought about getting one of the smaller ones. There was one just for tea and there was one for dinner. And I thought about getting one of those, but I was like, you know, this is the one that I have seen and heard about. I love, look at that lettering there, the metallic lettering, and then it's got the gold trim here and the floral setting, or the floral frame there. It's just a beautiful book. And I was like, you know, I'm gonna get this one. Get the real thing. Frank Churchill's Cardamom Coffee. Let's see. Mr. Collins's Pea Soup. I do not like pea soup. Strawberry and lavender shortcakes, but let me show you the picture. Ooh, I'm gonna have to make these. Those look amazing. Anyway, full page, full color pictures, and then beautiful recipes that tell you a little bit about the background of why the recipe is in the book, what it has to do with Austen. Strawberry preserves from Donwell Abbey. So anyway, I picked up this cookbook and I'm definitely going to have to make some foods from there. And the final thing that I bought was actually, my husband had noticed it. And then once I saw it, I couldn't not. This is based on the fabric that Jane Austen used in the police that she had commissioned that I showed you in the museum. And so it's the same pattern, the same design, but it's this bag. And it's like, has like a tapestry kind of feeling, like it's, I don't know, some kind of canvas or tapestry, whatever, and fake leather handles. So I loved it, and it was only $25. I mean, that was a no-brainer, honestly. So I don't know if my laptop will fit in here. I may use this as my laptop bag at school this year. We'll see. If not, maybe it will be another book bag because I don't have a really good one right now. So a bag to carry my books around in, certainly it would be good for that. Anyway, this was one of my favorite acquisitions. So there you have it, the J.P. Morgan Library, plus a few little bonus sites to see in New York next time you're there. I hope you are able to make it to the library, or if not, I hope you enjoyed this little visit that I took you with me. And let me know in the comments what those 3 things you would buy from the gift shop, and I will see you next time on my next adventure.